That's funny. Well, why don't we go ahead and call the meeting to order? We'll do a roll call vote based on being online. Alex, are you here?
I'm here from Royal Oak.
All right. And Peter, where are you? And are you
I'm
here?
here from Vero Beach, Florida.
Good for you. And I'm in Southfield.
He says it so excitingly.
Southfield is still a good town. It's not Royal Oak. I wish I was in Royal Oak right now. And Sharp noting that she's absent, headed to sunny Florida as well. Julie, do we have anyone that has signed on for public comment at all?
We do not.
Okay.
There are no attendees, and I've received no emails.
Okay, then we'll keep moving. And we can look at the minutes from our last meeting and approve them.
Yep, I can pull them up also. Okay. So there's the agenda. Okay, can you see the minutes? Do you see the minutes, or is it still the agenda?
Yes.
Oh, we see them. Okay. Yep, thank you.
Yep.
Any comments, corrections, clarifications?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor say aye by roll call. Pete?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
And I will approve as well. All right, minutes passed as presented. Next up, we'll go through our financials to receive and file. Any notations on this, Julie, for new transfers?
Yeah, so on the first page, that's where I usually put the 295 account. I just want to show this one. I am not having any business go through the 295 account, because we're still waiting for that to be transferred over.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to say that interest is still gaining. There's small amounts of interest, so that's why the total increases a little bit each month. But if we move to page 2, this is where the action is happening. And in the month of February, we took in a number of checks here, 250, 100, 3 checks from Beaumont, $15,434 for the AGE group in the senior center, $15,000 for the second half of the transportation for the senior center, and then $10,000 for the centennial celebration for Royal Oak. And these all are on our agenda in the payables section that you'll see in a minute or so.
Okay, great. All right. Any questions about this? Knowing we are going to be going through them in the payable section here shortly. If not, we'll move in. We'll receive and file them as noted, and we'll move into adopting today's agenda, which we created at the end of last time's meeting. Any changes from that time frame to today's agenda?
I have one.
Yep. Yes.
In new business, I'd like to add a topic of the Royal Oak Today magazine ad. We are going to have a half-page ad in the second quarter, and so I want to just touch base on priorities before the interview happens.
All right. Why don't we make that item number technically number 16, and we'll move number 16 to 17 as we always create our agenda for the next meeting at the current meeting.
Okay.
And is there a motion to approve today's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye by roll call. Alex?
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. All right. Next, we'll go through payables.
Okay. So as you can see here, there are a number of just pass-through transactions from Beaumont Health, from some individuals. And then at the end, there is an actual pay request for annual membership to the Interclub Council, which is a council that meets once a month here in Royal Oak. And their members include other 501c3 nonprofits that serve the community, nonprofits that are not 501c3s who serve the community, houses of worship, school groups, etc. So it seems like a really good connection for us to make. And during the last meeting, there was a question about how do we figure out who's doing what and who needs what. This is the place to be to learn those things.
Gotcha. All right, any questions or comments on any of these? I do want to make a special note, wearing my other hat on the first listing, the $15,000 for senior transport. It's one of the benefits I know that Beaumont is delighted to be able to provide to the city of Royal Oak. And special thanks to Paige Gambarski, who worked with Beaumont team members to represent the sponsorship in some adhesive stickers, logoing, to recognize that the service was underwritten by Beaumont too. That was very very creative and a nice representation of that sponsorship.
Great.
All right, if there's nothing else in payables, none of these require anything. Now, we're passing through money to outside organizations. Does that require a vote for us to move those dollars?
I'd recommend the safe way is yes.
Okay, so could I entertain a motion then to take all of these pass-through contributions and route them either to internal Royal Oak funds or to external partners as noted on today's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
I have one discussion just as a reminder for Alex that in the minutes, it has to show very clearly that these were all approved so that the finance department can move forward on the actions of moving the money.
So here's what I wrote. Motion by Fike, seconded by Provenzano to approve the following. And then I just copied and pasted each of the items that you have here from the agenda. Then noted, and we'll note the results of the, is that clear enough?
How about
Yes.
approve and distribute? Would that make it more clear?
I think just the approval is the recognition that they need. But,
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I just copied and pasted what Commissioner Douglas had done last for the minutes.
Okay.
But there were only 2 items, so they were all in one line. But since there's several, I decided to keep the bullets. I just want to make sure that you think that's sufficient?
Yes.
Okay.
That's good.
And since I'm talking, I'll just shout out for the Interclub Council. I guess I served on that with, or was a part of it when I worked for Representative Johnson. So I'm happy that they are still carrying the mission forward.
Great.
All right, good stuff. Let's go ahead and have our vote then. All in favor say aye by roll call. Alex?
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
And I approve as well. All right, next up, director's report. Julie?
Yeah. Okay, so most of the past month has been spent working on the fundraiser, just managing the money coming in and questions and additional advertising for the 3 charities. So that's where most of my time was spent. Although you'll see that I was able to attend the February Interclub Council. That was the first one. And again, think it would be really beneficial for us to be part of that. I also followed up with the interim city attorney about the financial setup and pending MOU. And then again with the OCC design student Ethan Martin to ask again to get the usable branded materials. I'm struggling with the logo and the document that he sent because they were built in strange software programs that I don't have access to. And I noticed today that Ethan has sent over another attempt at getting me something that is usable. So that may be solved as of today. And that's it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to dive into these a little bit more.
Any questions for Julie? All right. If not, thank you, Julie, for your report and for your always attentive work on this program. Next, we'll move into the city attorney's report. Mark.
Yeah, thank you. Two issues that I want to make the foundation board aware of. One is that the agreement with the student who designed the logos and the graphics, that's under review by Ann McLaughlin, the interim city attorney. And if that's approved, it will go before the city commission for approval once we get the artwork from the student, the electronic copies. The next issue is the interim city attorney, Ann, was looking through the city charter, and the very beginning section is the grant of powers to the city. It's very broad, very generic, but you did notice that it did not specifically allow or did not specifically state that the city could form a charitable organization. We don't think that's necessarily a problem, but it is allowed under the Home Rule City Act. So we've informed the Charter Review Commission and are preparing a ballot proposal for the Charter Review Commission, which approved will go to the City Commission. And then if that's approved by a 2/3 vote, will go to the city, will go to the AG's office and the governor. And if that's approved, then I'll go to the electorate for final adoption if they so choose. So we're putting the language together. We don't think it's a big issue. The great thing about the City Charter Review Committee is that anytime there's issues placed before the ballot, they reach out to the press and to other public groups where they act as emissaries for the revision and advocate for it. The city cannot. So I stay out of it. I will review some of their materials to make sure that there's nothing that the city does that advocates one way or another, because that's prohibited by the Campaign Finance Act. So when I put together the language, I will provide the Charter Review Board a copy of the election language, the ballot language. And I'll have to review whether or not the Civic Foundation can get involved in advocating for the change, if you want to.
We'd be able to provide, well, sorry, speaking generally about 501c3s, you're able to do educational information.
Yeah.
Or you're looking at it from the perspective of the tie to the city.
Yeah, the issue isn't whether or not education, that's allowed under the Campaign Finance Act. The city can provide information on a charter change, both positive and negative. It just has to be neutral. You can't use city public funds, taxpayer funds, to advocate for a charter change. You can clearly, though, use resources, public resources, to educate people on an issue without advocating for the change or against the change. So that's not the issue. The issue is whether or not you want to advocate for the change. I don't know if the ROCF can do that because of the way it's closely tied to the city. I'd have to reach out to Tony and see if that's an issue.
Given the timeline, what's the soonest that it would be before the voters, the electorate?
I'm sorry?
When would, which upcoming election would it be if approved, if all the way approval?
Yeah. We're looking at November because this is going to be a city election, an off-year election. The ballot is not going to be so large. There aren't going to be many issues on it, and there aren't the only candidates that I anticipate that will be on it will be the city commissioners and mayor. So it'll be a relatively short ballot. It should be a one-page ballot. It should be a short letter-sized ballot, not a legal-sized ballot, and it should be on one page, on the front page.
So Mark, am I understanding, just the basics of what you're saying is that our charter doesn't allow the city to have created the Civic Foundation?
No, it's not that. It doesn't specifically state that it can. If you look at the charter,
Okay.
chapter 1, it's pages long, and it's just a recitation of what was in the Home Rule City Act back 100 years ago. And it just lists everything that the city can do. And it's an expansive grant of authority. But to make it clear that the city can do this, we think the easiest thing to do is simply adopt the language from the modern Home Rule City Act that allows for creation of charitable organizations specifically and explicitly, put that into the general powers provision of the charter so it's clear. So if someday there's some kind of adversarial proceeding and somebody's going to bring it up, it'll be clear in the charter that it's specifically allowed, not generally allowed.
Okay. And how about in the worst case scenario, if the ballot doesn't go through, then what's our next step?
I think we're fine right now, but this is kind of a prophylactic action, not something that we need to, we're not trying to cure anything. We're trying to make sure it's a preventative action to just knock out one more thing that in case there's going to be any issues in the future.
Okay.
I mean, we have issues like that were outstanding for a while. For instance, the city charter had a mandatory provision in there for a health officer. And it was one of the 5 department heads that I think the city charter specifically mandated had to be appointed by the city commission. But in the 70s and 80s, the counties took over most of the health issues. The major exception of that is Detroit. Detroit still maintains a health department, but that's specifically allowed under the Home Rule City Act. That essentially only applies to Detroit, unless some other city gains more than 500,000 people. So for years, decades really, the city did not have a public health official. The city commission placed that before the electors, and they voted it down. It was maybe 2 years later, we put it back on the ballot with slightly different wording and from a more expansive review from the Attorney General's office, and the electors approved it. So the mandatory department head of health is no longer in the charter, but we operated for decades without it because the straightforward interpretation was that essentially the state law had preempted it by making the counties the chief health officials in the area, not the cities or the townships or villages.
So Mark, is there anything we have to do from a voting perspective to put this on anyone's agenda to resolve in our stead, or is it being handled in any other way?
No, the way the procedure works right now is that for decades, the city has had a charter review committee, as far as I can tell, going back into the 30s. And the charter review committee is empowered to review charter changes and make recommendations to the city commission, although the city commission can do it on its own. And then the proposal goes before the city commission and has to vote at least 5-7 to approve the provision and seek approval from the governor. That provision is then certified by the clerk, sent to the governor and the AG, because we know that the governor will ask for the Attorney General's opinion. Once the Attorney General office reviews it and approves it, the governor will probably 99.9% approve the provision. And that's the thing that counts. Once the governor approves it, then it's allowed to go before the electors. And then the electors only have to approve it by a plurality of the vote. And then it becomes effective once the charter revision is sent to the county's clerk's office, and simultaneously and the same time to the Office of the Great Seal, a division of the, I love the name of that office, the Office of the Great Seal. It's a division of the Secretary of State's office that keeps the official seal for the state of Michigan and all charters from, there you go. That's exactly what Alex is showing, the seal of the state. That's the official copy is kept by the state, the Office of the Great Seal. So they have records on all different charter changes for charter townships, villages. Oh, you got it signed. And for city charter changes. And it becomes official once they receive that. Then the city can act on it. Our city clerk's office is very effective. They usually receive that within a couple of days after the charter is approved.
Gotcha. And the time frame for all these pre-approvals to put it on a citywide vote ballot, it will all happen before November based on typical.
Yeah, because of the changes in state law on printing requirements, voter requirements, the county needs to know whether or not the county prints the ballots for its sister jurisdictions. So they have to know something like, I think it's 14 weeks in advance of the election, because you have to mail the ballots out 5 weeks, the absentee ballots out 5 weeks before the election. So they need 14 weeks to make sure everything's been certified. If there are candidates involved, they have to send notices to the candidates to see if their names are properly spelled and receive information back from all those entities, whether or not everything's fine. And then the AG's office, I mean, they've been pretty good, but we generally try to give them a couple of months head time. So that adds another 9 weeks. So you're talking almost half a year. So we try to get if we're setting something up for November, we try to get them notification. We try to give them the certified approval from the city commission by May.
Got it. Okay. So what I appreciate about this process, and as much as you talked about it being something that would be prophylactic to make sure we're covering ourselves in case of a future challenge, is it gives us a great opportunity to educate the public as well too.
Yeah, it does.
And have them, figure out what that campaign would be to say, hey, we exist now, and we're asking for your blessing to be involved with us going forward. So,
if the charter review committee approves this, I'd suggest potential to have maybe during one of their meetings have a joint meeting because they clearly their group are well, they're not a governmental board. They don't have access to government funds, but they have the ability to advocate. So, and generally, I don't participate in their sessions. I just sit there and listen, basically. But I don't participate in those sessions where they're putting together strategy for advocating. But they can talk with you about what the process might be and what they might like to do if the board's in favor of the provision. Now, you do have First Amendment rights to advocate or not advocate or advocate against any provision. The challenge is simply with the Campaign Finance Act that prohibits cities from spending tax dollars to advocate.
got it. All right. So next steps for this is your work with the review board for the charter, and then all the steps that fall in place after that.
Right. What's going to happen is I'm going to put together the proposed ballot language. I will then send that to the CRC, the Charter Review Committee, and to the Attorney General office. What the AG's office generally does is give us informal approval. They won't give us formal approval unless it's certified. Once we get their informal approval, we know it's good to go. And then we'll send it to the city commission, asking them for approval. So those are the next physical steps, is I have to finish drafting the language. It goes to the CRC and to the AG's office. And typically there's a little more complicated issues. I would anticipate there's some conversations that we would have between my office and the AG's office. But they, you know, they're the complete experts on this. And they've helped us a great deal in the past about suggested changes to the ballot language to keep it neutral and also to make it more clear to the electors what's really going on. So I don't anticipate any issues here. We are planning on 4 other issues. 3 have been already approved by the, all 4 have been approved by, informally approved by the AG's office. One, the CRC wants to rework. So we have most likely 4 other ballot proposals going on the ballot, and in addition, this one probably, so that's 5 ballot questions. The other 4 are mostly innocuous. The only one that I see any real issue is the one where we codify what happens if the mayor resigns or leaves office, and then what the procedure is proposed procedure is to replace the mayor, and then what happens to the vacancy in the city commission, if there is one, if they appoint from the city commission. So I don't anticipate there will be any big issues. There might be one, but they haven't finalized the language on that one yet.
Well, thank you. If you keep us posted on the progress in future meetings, and then I'll just make a note when we are putting together our agenda for the next meeting that we consider a discussion on is there something that we should be doing that provides visibility to the foundation as part of the ramping up process for the vote in November.
One advantage that you may have is that some of your money that you've received is not taxpayer money. But like I said, again, I have to check and see, because you're supported by the city of Royal Oak, how far you can go with any potential advocacy. But I will send you the proposed language at the same time I send it to the Charter Review Committee.
Great. All right.
So Mark, I have another question, please. So I went back 14 weeks from the beginning of November is mid-July. And then if we go 9 weeks before that, that's mid-May. Does this timing seem like it's reasonable for you all to?
This is the timing we've always used, yeah, that we get the proposed provision to the AG's office. What we're talking here is that, recall that we need to get it to them formally by that time. But if they've already given us informal approval, then it's just going to be a pass-through. There's not going to be, it's not going to take them a long time to review it.
Okay, because I just realized that it's mid-March, so that only gives 2 full months to get them the final.
That's what we've always done. And the
Okay.
AG's office is really good. I mean, there was one year because of some technical issues that just about every city in the state was passing charter changes. I don't recall what the issue was, but the AG's office literally took all their letters of approval, walked them over across the Capitol to the governor's office and delivered them on the last day, where the governor then approved them on that day with letters that were already ready to go. I don't anticipate that happening.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any questions of Mark? Anything else? All right, we'll look for future updates on that. Thank you for sending the language to us as well. And again, we'll put a pin in our discussions to add to our agenda for our next meeting, how this might be an opportunity for us to provide education. Great.
Thank you.
Right, we'll move next into unfinished business. The Kitch Riemann accounting setup decision. Do we have a decision?
We do not. I don't have any information since the last time we met. So I'm not sure if Mark does.
The last time I talked to Anna on this issue was, I think, last week, maybe 2 weeks ago. And there are some other issues going on that are holding up Ann. Was of the last week? No, there was no final conclusion.
So should we pen this discussion for our next meeting? Is there any urgency for us to resolve this in the next 30 to 60 days?
I don't see any. I mean, it's been that the administration is aware of the issue.
Okay. All right, we'll then continue to hang out with it then.
Yeah, and we've been using the 701 account that has, was funded with non-taxpayer money to do all of the work that we're doing right now, the pass through and the purchasing of things.
Okay. All right, so we'll just continue to be in our holding pattern on this item, and if there's any other questions or discussion, if not, we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Okay.
All right, item number 11, our fundraiser report and discussion.
Yeah, so, oops. Fundraiser, okay. All right, so the fundraising report. This campaign has gone really well. It's gone so well that I have not closed the fundraiser yet, because as of March 8th, there were still donations coming in. I checked with the charities and they said that's fine. I haven't seen anything for 2 days since the one donation on March 8th. So in the next couple days, we may turn it off. With the treasurer, we've been doing some digging into the PayPal Giving Fund, which is associated there, the money passers for the GoFundMe platform. And it looks like we should expect funding after April 15th, as well as this second issue. And there was a resident who set up a Facebook page because her daughter wanted to donate and offer a yoga class. But when the resident set up the Facebook page to advertise this, she set it up as a charity, and because Royal Oak Civic Foundation is listed in GuideStar as a charity, Facebook allowed a donation button to happen on that Facebook page that was not associated with us. Did I say that clearly enough? So people were donating to the Royal Oak Civic Foundation, but it wasn't set up by us. So I've done a lot of digging to figure out where that money is and ask the resident to turn that charity button off and lead people to our GoFundMe account. And so what I found is that Network for Good is the money passer for Facebook. And when we turned off, when I found that charity button and figured out what was going on, when we turned it off, $733 had been raised by this 9-year-old resident to donate to Royal Oak Civic Foundation. So it was really a nice thing that they did, and we just have to, plug through this to make sure that we've got all of the documentation for both of these organizations, Network for Good and Facebook, lined up. But it sounds like we do, and that we should expect that funding around April 15th of 2021 also.
Facebook holds on to the donations and delivers them quarterly.
That's not what they told us.
Okay.
And we can go kind of deep in the weeds. I don't want to go there, but there's Facebook and Facebook charity. Because we didn't set it up, we're not a Facebook charity, just it happened to be on Facebook. So that might be a little bit of the difference.
Okay.
One of the things I don't know two things about that issue. When the button was actually turned off, was it still $733 or had it increased a little bit? In my chart down here, I'm calling it 733 because that's the last number I saw. The other thing I don't know and have not been able to get that information is what is Network for Good going to charge us as fees when they, send over the money to us. Okay, so again, the campaign was really successful. All three of the organizations met their $2,500 goal and surpassed. You can see on the first line here. Actually, let me go back. So the total raised by the campaign was $12,025, and that is without our match. So here on this GoFundMe line, that is what the GoFundMe accounts look like as of today for each of the organizations. And then the second line is the GoFundMe fees. We were able to figure that out relatively easily. The PayPal Giving Fund fee, I see online that is zero, that they don't charge a fee. They're not going to put it in there yet because I haven't. I mean, the money has not gotten to PayPal Giving Fee yet or Giving Fund yet from GoFundMe. There's a delay there, and I just want to be sure before we put in numbers. Again, Facebook here, the resident who set this up said that their intention was to have the money donated equally between the three organizations. So that's where that amount comes from. And then we also took in a couple offline donations through checks that were written. So with all of that information, I end up with two questions for the trustees. And one is whether or not the Civic Foundation is willing and able to cover the processing fees for the campaign instead of the charities. My guess is seeing what we have here and just doing some back of the napkin calculations that the fees should be less than $500 total, especially if indeed PayPal Giving Fund doesn't charge anything. So that's one question. And then the second question is, considering that we won't end up with the money until mid-April, are we willing to pay out the money to the organization so they can move forward on purchasing food and getting it out to people who are in need, and then waiting to get the reimbursement from the fundraising platforms?
I would not recommend that. I'd have to look a little harder, but because the foundation is so tightly wound up to the city is prohibited from extending credit, if you will, to other entities. So it's the state treasurer might have an issue with that. But I can take a closer look at that if you want. I mean, the city cannot extend credit.
Okay, so perhaps another thought would be, does it make sense to give them the Royal Oak Civic Fund, Royal Oak Civic Foundation match of $2,500 ahead of time?
And once you have the money in hand, I think you're fine.
Well, we have the match in hand because that belongs to us.
Right. So I think you're within your discretion. I think within the board's discretion that can be done.
Okay. The only detriment I can think about taking that path is we lose the opportunity for, pictures with a check with the total amount going to the organization. Actually, I guess that's not true. I mean, we could send them the match ahead of time and then have a photo op later.
And what's our time frame that we think at the latest that we'll have these dollars from the online sources?
Well, from our best information, April 15th-ish of this year. But I will say that the treasurer and I have struggled getting information from all of these groups. The only one that has the ability to talk to a live person on the phone is Network for Good, which is associated with Facebook and the smaller of our fundraising amounts. And they, although we can talk to them, they don't have any information because Facebook hasn't sent them any information yet. And so their guess was, if Facebook follows the policy and the pattern that they typically do, we could have money by April 15th. So I guess I'm going into that detail because we don't know for sure.
Opinions about this and the timing of distribution or the partial distribution to get some of the money flowing and some food purchased on the early side?
I'm not sure I have a strong opinion. I think that I am a little apprehensive to distribute any money early on, but I don't know. Right? It seems like we're kind of at the mercy of the system and the process.
Alex, any thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think, the financial conservative in me doesn't want to give out money that we don't have in hand. But I do know we have the match and they've raised it, so we'll get it at some point. So I'm leaning towards recognizing that there will be probably, I don't know how long it takes to process checks after getting the approval from us. It goes to city commission and then it goes to finance to actual send out the checks. So that's a several additional week delay. So I was thinking about providing the match now, knowing they've raised it, so they met our, kind of our requirements. That's kind of where I'm sitting. I know the other questions around, Julie, you mentioned the covering the fees, which I have mixed feelings about. Feels in line with what we're trying to achieve, but I don't know. But in addition, they charge the fees in addition to the tip they require. I'm sorry, that's what I'm sitting here thinking about, actually.
Yeah, so GoFundMe asks for tips because they say these fees don't go to them. These fees are processing fees for MasterCard and Visa. So GoFundMe in the front end says we don't charge any fees, and so if your people will tip us, that would be great.
Got it. All right, that's helpful. Thank you for clarifying that. I should have remembered that.
Is there a way that, from the interest of beginning this process, where we could have this, the city generate the distribution, the checks, but we hold them until the funding comes, or is there? I don't know. Do we have the money in the account? I guess in total, or no?
Well, we have the match for sure. Let me. This. Okay. So we have $16,000 of unrestricted funds in the 701. And then in the 295, we have 13,000. So yes, we do.
You know, at the same time, I kind of believe that I mean, while I'm sure they would like the money as soon as possible, the charities, I have to believe they run into this all the time, as far as, you know, fundraisers and this process of getting the money, and
And the delay.
especially GoFundMe and. Are they, Julie, did you say, I mean, so,
Nobody has asked for this. Nobody has said anything about how soon do you think we'll get some money. I think it's really on my end coming up with these questions, because if indeed, you know, well, I shouldn't even say if indeed, we have hungry people in the community, and you know, the fundraiser was to work to mitigate that. So my first thought is the faster we can get them the money, the more quickly they can turn that into helping residents and community members. So this question doesn't come from anyone in particular except me. So I think if you know, there's not a comfort level in moving forward, paying this out ahead of time, then you know, we should just let it go until next month. And you know, if we hear something, some more desperate request, consider paying it at our April meeting.
Is it something we could vote on today to get it in process, knowing that we'll plan to receive it in April, and then make sure that we're kind of expediting the approval administrative process now, so when the funds actually come to us in April, that it's kind of taken out that window? Or do we need to physically have it in the account to make the motion and then spend the dollars? We do have those dollars here between both of them, but
Yeah, the only problem with making the requests right now is we don't know exactly what the amount would be. I mean, if you answered and said, yes, we're going to pay the fees, and I stop the fundraiser right now, then we basically know what the amount will be. Although, you know, again, it's not clear to me when the Facebook button was turned off was $733 the total. I mean, somebody could have donated $15 before I saw it close, and that would change things. So,
well, the fee piece sets precedent, and I also have mixed feelings about it. I think it's a great idea to provide as a service, but I also realize it will eat into our administrative funds. It gives us an extra issue to raise for future fundraisers too. Any thoughts from the group on your preferences? I could really vote either way.
I tend to agree with you, Tom, and maybe, you know, this is a learning experience. Maybe, you know, some of this can be, for lack of a better term, disclosed to our grantees. You know, that, you know, give them an idea of the timing, you know, the fees, how that works. And you know, again, I know I'm sure they're grateful for the money, and so I think all in all, it'll be a positive thing. But I do think that taking on the fees or covering the fees really just means we have to raise more money to cover those fees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we should not cover the fees, and make exceptions when we can. I think it's probably like the appropriate fiduciary decision.
Good. That's a good thought.
I know there are other platforms where it can ask you to pay for the processing fees too. So to Pete's comment about kind of learning and things like that, I do still like the idea of providing the match, unless we want to give them one big check, a la Robertson Brothers to ROCF. At which time, I mean, it's not like you can take that to the bank anyway. We can still do that. So.
Well, yeah, that's a good idea. So we know then, Julie, we know that the rest of the money is coming.
yeah, I sure hope so. I can't think of any reason that it wouldn't be coming. I mean, it was raised, it sits in the platform. GoFundMe is, you know, a company that's been around for a while, and it goes to PayPal Giving Fund, and that's been around. And
I would be okay giving the match, because the reality is, let's say on totally unforeseen circumstance where the money doesn't come, but we know, so let's just say there's an issue. I think we would still give them the match, being that donors came forward and made the donation. And if for some reason GoFundMe doesn't come through, we've got an issue with GoFundMe then. I'd be okay with the match and fronting the match.
I agree. I'm fine with it as well. I can go either way because the timing, if we're gonna have this money in approximately 30 days, is it administratively prudent to send it all at once, or is it impactfully prudent to make sure that we're giving the money in waves to help address the need now?
Mark, do you have any concerns with like fronting the match at all from a legal perspective? It seems that worst case scenario, we would have to go after GoFundMe. I can't imagine them not coming through, but I'm not sure it's the charity's issue.
Yeah, going after GoFundMe would probably mean action in the Delaware courts or federal district in Delaware. So long as the money is there and you're not extending the city's your credit, or therefore the city's credit, because I think the way the Civic Foundation is set up, if there was any shortage, it would probably fall on the city to make it up. That would cause, I think, issues. But if the money is there, I don't see an issue.
I see, just to keep talking about I see the match. We already have it in hand. We already put it up. They needed to raise it. They raised it. So it was always going to be a net negative from that perspective. So
right.
With that, I would motion to approve. Is that okay? Unless there's further discussion.
I'll support that.
Sorry. Well, so to be clear, motion to approve by motion by Fike, seconded by Provenzano. Sorry, Tom. I'm making notes while I'm talking. To approve disbursement of the quote unquote match of $2,500 for, and then I'll note the three organizations. That is the motion that I am proposing. Sorry.
Which sounds like it was both made and seconded. Any discussion on this topic at all? We have decided that we will, at this point, not handle, not absorb any of the administrative fundraising fees from the processors. So noting that there's no other discussion on it, we'll call the question. All those in favor say aye by roll call. Start with Alex.
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well.
Julie, for the sake of the minutes, can you pull up that document that has their formal titles so I can just copy and paste real quick?
The three charities.
Yeah. Well, Tom, you could probably pull on to the next topic.
Which document do I don't think I have one open. Right. Oh wait, sorry, yeah, I do.
And while Alex is cutting and pasting and Julie is providing this information, we'll move on to big picture visioning. Knowing we have just under 50 minutes left in today's meeting. Big picture visioning and discussing narrowing our focus. Now, part of this discussion was we were considering, it was referenced in today's minutes, I think, some of the groups that we would potentially support. One of them was on my plate, which I talked to Paige Gombarski at the Senior Center. And I think I did send a quick report on her response that there was not a need at this time based on anything COVID with seniors. So that's off the table. Char sent forward needs of the Centennial Park, and those narrowed down to restrooms or a fountain.
Yep. And Mark, were you part of the Monday commission meeting?
No, are you discussing about the park finances?
Yeah, because I think the DDA agreed to pay the water feature, but I don't want to say it for sure because I wasn't part of it either.
The DDA has agreed to provide some money for the park, but I don't know if it was directly for the water feature. My understanding is I don't watch the meeting on Monday. I will be having a meeting with Dan tomorrow afternoon. The discussion was about the $290,000 or so needed to install a restroom in the park. Right now, the nearest restrooms are the library, City Hall, and the farmer's market, and I suppose the police department. But there's some concern from some citizens, some residents, that if you have a water feature, you're going to have little children who need to change out of their swimsuits back into regular clothing.
What was
The last I understood before Monday's meeting was that the city commission was considering not financing the bathroom until later. I don't know what the results of the discussion were.
And those price tags, if I remember correctly, was it 200 and something thousand for the water feature and 400 and nearly 500,000 for the restrooms? Is that correct?
I thought the water feature was 400. I thought it was the opposite. I thought it was 188 and change for the bathroom. I recall in Warren, when I was on the DDA, we installed a giant water feature and which also is a skating feature in the wintertime. And the water feature costs more than the restrooms and the change rooms for the ice skates. I don't know. I don't know what kind of water feature they're talking about. Which, by the way, according to Google, has turned into the #1 most visited area in all of Warren, most likely to take wedding photos and graduation photos.
Is that the park that's on 13 Mile that is?
No, it's directly in front of their city hall, which was constructed which was finished in 2007.
Got it. Okay.
Well, one of the three water feature companies. I think this one was designed by a company called Wet Design. It's got all the features but smaller that you would see over at what's that casino in Vegas called?
Oh, the Bellagio?
Bellagio, not the same company. They're competitors, but there are jets, there are sculptures, and there are multicolored LED lighting that are hard programmed to 9 different songs, 4 of which are a little more than 9, I think 12 maybe, 4 of which are, there's, 3 or 4 Motown, 3 or 4 classic. I picked all the classics because nobody knew anything about classics, and the DDA was paying for it. And then rock and roll and some other music. And so when it's working, the water fountain, which has 6 different zones, presents a pattern like Bellagio of lights.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm glad they did it. It was expensive. It became a campaign issue.
But the DDA funded 100% of the one for Royal Oak, though.
Yeah, I mean, the interesting feature about what happened in Warren was the DDA financed the entire civic complex, including the city hall, which captured taxes from other tax entities. So the weirdness about that, because of the way the financing works for the DDA, other tax entities actually subsidize the construction of the city hall and the civic foundation, the civic center.
Mhm.
So it's a really nice feature. I'll send you a video of it that I took. So I don't know. Was there any formal request from the city commission to the civic foundation for any funding for the water feature in the Centennial Park or for the restroom?
There was not. It was a conversation Shar had with the city manager about needs that were still on the table. And I think were either considered to be phase 2, phase 3 projects. And would we consider adopting what would be a contemporary need critical to the community, or something that was would provide some benefit to the new development of the city center. So
Now they're going to be knocking down the old buildings any day now.
both, how do you feel about the levels of both price tags? I'll ask the committee that. You know, we're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars in campaign fundraising campaign dollars. The time frame to do that, the level of commitment for what would be probably our most public project to start. Do you feel like it's doable? Do you think it's, feel like it's a bit of a stretch?
But I love the idea. Was really disappointed in the cost. I do think it's a stretch. I think the dollars are really high. And I'm hopeful we can find something is meaningful, but at a lower price point, that would give the Civic Foundation some exposure the way something in a park would. You know, if you know, be a great way to have a plaque on something in a park that people see the impact that the Civic Foundation is having on the community. I love that aspect of it. But the dollar amount, I just had a little sticker shock at first. I have to admit.
Alex, thoughts?
Price tag is challenging, though I think that it aligns with our work. I mean, we've communicated about a couple different things as far as our overall priorities, and the breadth of, you know, whether that's placemaking or community making. So I see it aligning with our mission. The price tag is challenging. However, I'm also wondering if there are any grants available or things along those lines of which we are engineered for. It's not necessarily playing in the fundraising role exclusively. We could be a mechanism for fundraising, more broad-based. And then secondly, if there is any grants available for, just call it placemaking. I am conscious of the fact that restrooms do provide an accessibility component as well. So just thinking out loud.
I have similar thoughts. And Pete, you phrased it very well. Love the concepts, and the price tag is a little daunting for sure. And I wonder if, you know, that was the planning committee's recommendation. I'd be curious, was there another option that might have had a more palatable price tag that we could help to spur that on? Was the only other thought that I had. So, like, is there a sculpture or something that they're looking to put in there that we could raise money for, or something like that? Sculpture. When you say water feature, maybe a fountain. I wasn't thinking about a kid, a recreation, or a Bellagio fountain, but, you know, something like a sculpture or something that, you know, could be really nice.
My understanding was that the water feature would be interactive.
Okay.
That you can run through it
More like a splash pad and less the
Yeah.
Star Dream fountain that already exists.
Yeah, it would be interactive, not like the Star Dream fountain that you're not allowed to go into.
Thank you for that clarification. Yes.
I mean,
What do you mean we're not allowed to go
Anyone
into it?
listening?
What?
you could thank all the skateboarders for that.
Yeah.
Look at all the marble, the granite; it's all chewed up.
Mm.
Is there like something with, well, I still like the park idea, but I was even thinking about the entrance, maybe, at the city limits on Woodward, like signage, sculpture, something like that, we might be able to wrap our arms around for the community. I don't know what has been maybe discussed with the city, within the city internally about some different ideas.
Yeah, I don't know that there's been a conversation. I think these two items popped to the top because of, funding
Sure.
and wanting to move forward with the project. And so, the water feature came in and the bathroom. And so I think the real push was, how do we solve this, this bit of a fire issue, right? How can we move forward on putting these in place? So I would expect, and Mark, you can help me with this perhaps, once, the water feature is, solved, then they have the opportunity of the restroom being like a phase 2 or a phase 3. And then I would expect smaller pieces for that park and others, because don't forget, we're not done developing the Normandy Oaks Park yet. There could be other opportunities for us, at various places. And further, there is a Parks and Rec committee that meets. And so maybe it would make sense for one of us, maybe Shar, since she grabbed, the Centennial Park investigation, to ask them, what else is on your needs and wants list?
It might be a good opportunity for the city manager to weigh in on those also.
Yeah, I think they're, really great ideas with the restrooms and then the water feature. I think in fairness to them, we just have to probably need to give them an idea of a dollar amount that we might, we feel like we can get our arms around to give them some sense of what we might be thinking.
Yeah, and this question makes me think, further into our fundraising abilities. We have not gotten to a point where we've been able to talk about who do we know, how do we move forward on fundraising, how do we attempt to bring in donors, long-term donors, and so I think it would be helpful in the future for us to have a sense of what we might be able to fundraise. Is it unreasonable for us to think that we could fundraise $300,000?
I feel like we're a few years away from that.
Okay.
I think we need to your point, to start cataloging resources of where we could start to apply for the funds and what types of funds would be available as well too. It's something I'd love to help with. And Mark's comment about the top destination in Warren is this fountain, that people are actually making it part of their special day and all that, being able to provide that type of resource to Royal Oak. I love that concept a lot. That'd be great to start a campaign around a traffic driver and something that is a signature piece of Royal Oak that people look for, visit, incorporate in social media postings, all those types of things I think would be fantastic. But it's a really big amount of money. And maybe there is a resource that could pay for a certain amount of it and we could raise the rest of it. But I think this requires more discussion, in my opinion.
I'd love to play a leadership role within it if we agree that it's within our mission scope, but I think that it's probably too soon for a budding organization. That's to kind of latch on to what you're talking about, Tom.
Okay.
So let's keep this for now, if the group agrees, in our, I think parking lot is probably a little too remote. Should we keep it on the old business? So we come back to it with some specific recommendations to talk to, Parks and Rec and the city manager as well. So we can have maybe a bit more of an informed discussion on this topic in the future.
Makes sense to me.
Maybe an invitation to the city manager and or the department heads to participate in the meeting.
I like that idea a lot.
And do you mean one of our board meetings or a subcommittee meeting, like an ad hoc committee meeting in between our board meetings?
Either one.
We could consider inviting them to our next meeting to review those proposals and the needs, and we can have more of a direct discussion about what we think our resources would be and the time frame as well.
I like the idea of inviting them to our meeting and getting to know them and just have a conversation, a brainstorming meeting to give them a sense of what we're looking for, our mission, keep us in mind, and see if something comes to mind.
It's also budget season for the department, so they're working through. They should be highly attentive of what they right now, what they need for their future budget.
Okay, let's plan to do that then as our next action item. How do we accomplish that? Is that something, Julie, that we send a note to these groups to ask them if they'd like to attend? Is it that simple?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you can help define who should be on that email, if we can talk through that right now, that would be helpful also. So I have city manager and the DPS director comes to mind because he's also the Parks and Rec person or
Okay.
the director. But then we have a Parks and Rec staff member also who I think runs the Parks and Rec committee, with appointed residents. So they both may be good options.
Mhm. Okay, I think that sounds like a good list to start with, and to at least have a conversation with them as part of our agenda for our next meeting.
Mark, when you said department heads, are you thinking of others?
The ones you listed, I think, are exactly what I would have listed.
Okay, so not planner, not somebody from planning or engineering?
I mean, if you're talking, if these people know you might be able to provide them with dollars, I'm sure they all will show up.
Let's start high level planning, kind of conceptual first, and then
Yeah.
let's take it from there.
Okay.
All right. Any more discussion on this topic? And Julie, thank you for inviting them to our next meeting to attend. We'll make sure that that's part of our agenda. We may move it up to the early part of our meeting so that we're being cognizant of their schedules. If there's no more discussion, we'll move on to funding process for entities. And I think the context for this discussion, let me double check our minutes. Discuss how and what and to what extent community engagement will drive the foundation's agenda. So that conversation came out of, are we looking at community needs assessments? Are we looking at having a wish list that's provided by the city commission and administrators from the city? What's our starting point for creating a process? Any preferences or thoughts?
I see it as one input. I see us the trustees, and ultimately the decision rests with us and with a member. So that's kind of my initial reaction to the question. But I think that engaging community is a good way to increase our prevalence and relevance. How's that for stating the facts?
I like to use the word relevance to it. That's awesome. So do we think a community needs assessment, or do we think something that's more publicity oriented, where it's the Royal Oak wish list, and people get the chance to opine and fill in a digital format what they think the city could use, or we get some input from the city commission that says this is what they're hearing from their constituents. Help us narrow it from there. And then we start a public process of narrowing it and advising, promoting what the possibility could be as part of the fundraising effort, and then helping the community select, providing a mechanism for the community to select, we'd like you to work on this because we know it's going to impact the community in a certain way. Certainly not oversimplification, but it's a backing into the process based on input.
We've talked about this before. I like the idea of surveying the public. I like the promotion part of it. I think there's a lot of value in seeking the public's thought, the community's thought. I'm just not sure how practical that is. I'm not sure how to operationalize that. That's where I get stuck. But there's a part of me that says you do it. So I'm a little bit. Let me back up. I'm more in favor of surveying as we have the board commission. They represent the public. I think it's a little bit easier to survey them, to brainstorm with them, to talk to city administration about the same types of things. They see the needs of the community. They are out there all the time. So I lean more that way from an operational standpoint, practical standpoint. But, maybe we do both. I'd be open to doing both, knowing that if it's a little bit more difficult to operationalize the public piece of this, we have something to fall back on, which was the administration piece and their voice. So I'd be in favor of doing both.
I can see us creating a situation where we get our marching orders from City Commission, and we can use that public promotion piece to talk about what would you support. We've been given these as community needs, and here are some tactics that we're considering to raise funds. What would you in the Royal Oak community support? So we're getting the dialogue of what would donors do.
I can see
Like that. I think taking it a little bit, the most recent example of the work that we are completing right now, where we identified a need in part with city commission input related to food, and then we kind of engaged the community and the donors around a little bit of voting, to the match component, less voting. So I was thinking that we could also, to your point, Pete, it's not lost on me, the actual doing can take a lot of effort. And so I'm thinking something that is light, something that's not scientific if we were to do a broad-based community, input, and then also almost like a suggestion inbox, just to help. But I agree. I think we do take our direction from the member, which is the city commission.
Maybe, what I like is to facilitate this. Maybe the city can help us through could be as simple as through their social media channels, for them to kind of promote the work. And I say this to say, hey, our new Royal Oak Civic Foundation is looking for feedback and for projects to support. Let them know what you think. And we might be able to receive a lot of feedback if the city allows us to kind of ride on their coattails and they promote us on their own social media channels. I like that versus us doing it on our own.
Yeah, I think that is really a doable thing. Our community engagement person, Judy Davids, she has lots of experience around community surveys. She's in charge of sending out the Friday e-blast and keeps that moving along. So I think that that would not be a hard pull for the city to help with that piece. You know, once we get some general direction from the commission, and we could make it fun too, right? We could have the voting, and yeah, I think that is doable.
So how do we move this forward as a concept then? Do we need to draft a potential process? Do we need to maybe have another conversation where we invite certain stakeholders who could help us with this to a future meeting where we can kind of talk through what the mechanics might look like and make our recommendation from there?
You also have the city commission on a yearly basis in January has its goal setting sessions.
Yeah, so we use that goal setting session actually to ask the commission this time what their top 5 thoughts were for needs in the community. And then we distilled all of that, and that's what we have right now as the priorities of the commission for 2021 going forward.
Okay.
Do you
know, and
recall that
what we saw, just as a quick reminder, the top was the COVID stuff, which it appears that other entities are serving those pretty well. The second highest was the Parks and Rec, and I think that's where, you know, we dialed down a bit and said, okay, well, that sounds like an interesting piece for us to take on. What are some needs for the parks?
do you have what 3 and 4 and 5 were?
I could look.
You know, I'm kind of thinking that I go back to, you know, we've already asked the commission and they've told us, you know, what the priorities are. I think we could use those as our priorities for the next, you know, the upcoming months. But as we plan for the following year, I think that it would make sense to survey the public for the following year potentially, because these things take time. And I wonder if it's a simple, Julie, I know you're looking right now, but I'd be curious to know if this is doable. Would it be a matter of you sitting down with Judy and just talking about a way that the city could send out a survey on our behalf and kind of promote and kind of come up with a game plan and bring it back to us at a future date? Could it be as simple as that?
Mm-hmm. So let's see. How about let me run through what we've got here first. Vulnerable populations was the top scorer. Second was Parks and Recreation. Third was sustainability, which includes programs to empower residents with tools and information to be better stewards of their water and land, support tree planting, environmental sustainability upgrades, green infrastructure. So actually there were 3 tree planting votes there. Senior center, oh sorry, no, and then the next one is seniors. Senior center improvements, the building facelift at the senior center on Murray. And to make sure that residents have connection to the resources that they need. And then animal shelter and arts scored the same.
So there's quite a bit of information there. So now I'm thinking, would it make sense for our meeting with the city manager to be, so could we potentially go over that list that came from the commission to really brainstorm some specifics that might meet those needs, some different projects that he might have in mind, or administration might have in mind, that fall into those categories. And then in the future, to survey the public and the commission makes sense to me, but I don't know that that has to happen right away. I think that's something that we could do in the future.
Planning Commission is discussing right now doing some of that or all of that with the potential for the new master plan. Judy was at the Plan Commission meeting yesterday where they discussed a lot of that. If you actually go onto the, if you watch the meeting or check out the agenda, there's a lot of information that Judy provided that could be helpful for the foundation.
But to peek back to your question here, I think, you know, given that we're still young and trying to figure out, you know, our place and our path, we made an effort to talk with the commission. They gave us a long list of different opportunities. Perhaps this isn't the year where we try to also dive into the community. Or maybe it is.
I'm kind of feeling the same way. I think it's a great idea. It might be something we do in the future. Maybe it's next year. Maybe it's months. You know, maybe it's months from now to have projects in mind for the next year. But I think, you know, we've asked the commission for their priorities. I think we should, you know, we've funded one of their ideas, and I think if we're looking for another project, I think it's a matter of taking that list, sitting down with administration, with the city manager, Shar, and say, hey, you know, what other things do you have in mind that we might be able to do, you know, specifically that meets these needs that we can kind of get our arms around. Bathroom, great idea for the park, love it. It's just a little more than we think we can tackle so early on in our organization.
This and our last topic both seem like they're subcomponents of an operational planning process that I wonder if that discussion should happen pretty quickly too. Like, where are we? What are we going to do in what order?
Yeah.
Right now, as we found a new organization, you know, we're certainly finding our way. I wonder if we try and chart out, okay, just operationally, what do we want to tackle in the next 3 years? And we put things in the order, and then we start to use that as our guiding document to handle these and create the operational pieces out of them.
I agree. And I think we've got a really good story to tell right now, to sit down with administration, the city manager. You know, the fundraising that we did for the 3 charities, I think we're wildly successful. I think that we've got a lot of really great momentum. And I think we stick, you know, it's those, I'm starting to see our niche form where we did that, I think, really well. And especially in this virtual world that we're living in. So I think there are a lot of things that are potentially in the back of their minds, administration, that might meet the needs that they've communicated to us. I think we explore those first.
So how about if we create, do you want to do both then? Should we talk about charting out our next few years and what order we put things in, and then put those 5 items on the agenda as our next funding priority, so that we're starting to discuss what we can resource for those as well? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right, so let's pen that into our development of our next agenda then too as well. We're kicking the can down the road a little bit, but we're a very full meeting in April.
Yeah, so I wonder, is somebody else willing to take that initiative to, you know, craft a document with the questions that we need to ask? Because it would be great. I have a full plate right now with many things that have deadlines coming up, and I don't know that I could take on another project.
to ask questions of administration or?
No, it sounds like we have this fundamental discussion that needs to happen about, our process and where we're going and what we're going to see in the next year to 3 years and so forth. And I don't want to miss anything.
Right. And Julie, I'm not thinking this would be something that would land on your plate. What I'm looking at this as being a discussion we have at our next meeting where we talk amongst the four of us that are volunteers with US staff as well and say, all right, if we put a calendar in front of ourselves for a year, what should we accomplish? And then let's chart out how often we want to kind of pop up and make sure we're having impact. And so we're taking an operational calendaring perspective on it. I think we can handle that in an operations meeting. And I'm glad to do a little bit of pre-work on that to just outline a few thoughts and bring it to the next meeting as well. So again, not something that would land on your plate, but I'm glad to provide what would be an outline of what could a year look like, and then how do we multiply that times 3?
Sounds great. Thank you.
Sure. Or any other discussions on this topic? All right, well, we'll come back to it as part of a connected discussion in April. Gift acceptance from specific industries. This topic came forward based on what are we sure we want to accept money from everybody? I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, I'm going to suggest we just remove this and we can worry about it at a later date.
This topic.
I'm going to talk about why I brought it up. I think we're not going to do anything that's going to run afoul of anything legal, so I don't think we need to talk more about it. But since we already have a gift acceptance policy set, does that everyone feel okay with everything I just summarized?
I'd be okay with that.
If you say it, we'll swear to it. Absolutely.
The only reason that it's helpful to outline it ahead of time is because the Titanic didn't want to build lifeboats when it was already out to sea. However, the chances of this happening are pretty slim. So I imagine so, and I think we can just cross the. I don't know. Let me make up some more metaphors. Cross some bridges when we need to, and avoid the icebergs in the river.
Well, I think it's one of those things where it's hard to predict, what's going to happen, and so it's one of those where we have policies in place where we can look at them. To your point, Alex, on a case by case basis, and make decisions together based on the realities that exist at that time.
I think the greatest risk would actually be a third-party fundraising component related to some industries that might raise money that is not federally recognized. But the third-party fundraising policy is robust enough that I think it wouldn't disallow a potential issue. Does that make sense? To the point where we would get to a gift acceptance conversation. Anyways, those are my thoughts. Should I put in the notes that we've removed it? Should we vote?
Well, I want to just throw this out there. I know that Shar was the one who asked to have this put on because of some conversations about marijuana industries making donations, and that the schools were not comfortable taking the money. I mean, this is my recollection, so with a grain of salt, that schools were not comfortable or could not take it, but the Royal Oak Civic Foundation perhaps could take it and pass it through back to the schools. So I'm not sure. I mean, does anybody else remember her conversation about that?
I don't recall the exact piece of it, but part of that I find troubling, that we would accept something someone wouldn't to give it to them, so that we've somehow cleaned it. It just seems to not pass the ethics sniff test. If we accept it, we accept it. If to give it to someone who does not accept it so that they can accept it, to me just feels wrong.
Possession and sale of marijuana are still against federal law, and you're chartered by the Internal Revenue System. So I think it would create all sorts of issues. You can't violate federal law. I mean,
Or
anybody,
play in the park fountain, the fountain. Sorry, park.
yeah.
Loved every picture you put up in today's meeting, by the way.
I finally found a park one, so.
Yeah. So could we say that, to conclude, and whether I don't remember whether we need to, I do remember Shar talking about this. I don't know how, what her thoughts are with her not being here, but I would be one to say that we have policies that already exist that say that we have to follow the law, and we will continue to do so. And I'm not sure we need any more policies that speak to that.
I think one of the questions she raised, and I don't know, Mark, if you can opine on this. Sorry to interject on you before, but if an individual has money that could have been associated with that business sector, whether that would be an issue. But I mean, I don't know enough about how they're handling banking, because most banking organizations are FDIC, which means that they can't bank there. So I don't like excluding someone bringing a big bag of cash. Like, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but I don't know how else we would get the money. Does that make sense? If we get a check from someone, it's not really on us to decide, like, to dig into where they came from, because the bank is already determined. But that's the only reason, the only way I think we could talk about it.
I guess for me, I'm just not sure what we're trying to do. And so if I'm just, to me, we have policies in place and we look at things case by case according to those policies. If something comes up that we need to adjust a policy for that we're not expecting, that's fine. I think it's worth, it was worth the conversation for us to have that conversation to kind of get to this point. But it just doesn't seem like it has anyone really feel strongly enough about it to really do something with it. I think the sense that I've received from the other members of the board is that we have policies in place that already cover these types of conversations. And I would be supportive of just removing it or just concluding exactly that.
Agreed. Why don't we conclude that our current policy covers us, and we'll continue to update it as needed, but following federal and state laws. Is there any other conversation on the topic? All right, we can consider it closed then. We have 11 minutes left in today's meeting. New business, trustee recruiting, discuss job description and application drafts with a double asterisk.
Yeah, so let's see. Did you have a chance to read through the draft questionnaire and the draft job description? Let's see. And the reason that these are coming up now after our article in the paper, there was a request for people who have some interest in becoming trustees to let us know, and 3 people reached out. And so it seemed to me it was time to have, some documentation that we could forward on to people who have interest, to make sure when they know the obligations and responsibilities of the position, are they still interested? And then if so, bring their names back to the governance committee, nomination and governance committee, and then take the next steps.
So the only thing that I thought was missing from it is a focus on fundraising. We will, when we had formed this body, we were clear that we would that everyone is a fundraiser, and that we want to make sure that each trustee participates in that activity. We don't want to be guilty of generating lots of ideas that somebody else can activate. And that protects both members of this group and Julie as well. Our job is not to tell Julie what to do all the time. Hey, go do this for us. Our job is to try and find resources and pursue them ourselves. So I'd like to suggest that we add some sort of language that in the front part of this that puts anyone coming forward, puts them in a place to understand that the responsibility includes fundraising and that they will be a solicitor.
Item 4, ensure adequate resources for the organization. That does get to that from my perspective, but we can be much more explicit about it.
Yeah, so under requirements number 2, that's where it talks about personal stake, making personal financial contributions, as well as to raise funds from external sources. So should we boost this requirements number 2 up a little bit, and then also at the front end?
Yes, I think so. I think that the way that it reads right now is it seems governance and administration based. That's a portion, but if we are to be a relevant function to the city of Royal Oak, we're going to be fundraising regularly.
I think just including something in the trustee's purpose, like a third paragraph that's pretty much just one sentence that says this includes fundraising. Something that's very direct to your point, Tom.
Yep.
And leaving everything else.
Yeah, that would do it for sure. As long as
Do you
it's,
have a sentence or two that you'd like in here, Tom? Do you have some language that you're thinking of?
why don't we? Why don't we put something that all trustees will function as community fundraisers, both identifying and personally soliciting cash and in-kind gifts to support active campaigns.
I'm sorry, what was the last word?
Support active campaigns.
Does that look suitable?
Does it feel strong enough? Clear enough?
I think so.
I think that looks good.
I'm happy.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and I think the questions look great.
That's great.
Nice job on that, Julie.
Thank you. Okay, and then the questions, and so you mean the questionnaires are for the questions on the questionnaire?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and by the way, Alex helped going through these ahead of time also, so thank you, Alex, for
Nice
that.
job, Alex.
Woo, woo, woo.
Team effort.
No, Julie did a great job. That's all I'll say.
Somebody doesn't sound happy about the questions in the background.
No, he opened a box that that includes something he'll be getting later on.
Okay.
So do we
Okay,
get
so-
any special, do we need to move to adopt these as entree documents for anyone considering membership?
Yeah, I would say, I think that'd be helpful if we just do that. And then I was going to say, we should also discuss, recognizing that we have 3 minutes left, how to go about inviting individuals, like to a conversation. Is that just one of us meets with them to talk about this, provide this to them first? I guess a little bit of a process. Does that make sense? I would suggest that we provide this to them, the job description, the survey, have them send it back and then meet with them after.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Tom and Alex, do you have some suggestions maybe on an approach for doing that we can discuss? I mean, it's a little outside of my wheelhouse. I'd love to learn from you, the proper way of maybe doing that.
Tom, do you want to go or you want me to go?
You can go ahead, go.
So I would recommend posting the job descriptions that people can kind of self-select. And then obviously those that have already reached out, it would make sense for Julie to send them the job description along with the survey, just to get them thinking about it. And then have one of us meet with them after they've submitted the information, one of us or with Julie. Or a couple of us, doesn't really matter. Have a conversation around kind of the work and get to know the individual a little bit. So it's a little bit of an interview, but then also discuss the work that we have going on, to try and match. And the goal is it's a little bit of an informational interview while providing context about the organization, because it might not match their interest, just to be really blunt. So that's typically, and then if it does, then bring it back to the governance and nominating committee to have a conversation, advance it to the board for a potential candidate. That's the traditional process. I think it would also make sense to list the questions on there as well and ask them to submit it to us, and then that way theoretically the governance and nominating committee would get a multiple, have a whole list built out of interested individuals with some of this information about it. Obviously seeking a holistic board. Is that helpful? Is that too much?
Yeah, that's good.
No,
I like that. So we would basically post this notice. Would it be on our website, or maybe have the city help with that as well? Okay, I like that.
I think the idea of doing a social push as well too. And Alex, you covered all, I think, really nicely. I like the idea of us getting the message out more broadly about kind of activating, current trends in community involvement. People are getting involved in their communities to have impact. They're looking to improve their local communities. Invest in their immediate surroundings as well. And if we could work with Judy Davids to even put together kind of a trend piece on here's what's happening, even post-COVID too. It's really kind of galvanized people's desire to connect, though virtually, but to really impact their local communities. And it's perfect timing that the Royal Oak Civic Foundation was coming online, and we're looking for dedicated Royal Oak Okians, Okers, to become involved with us.
Okay, that sounds good.
So that makes me think of a question, and sorry, it's 4:59. That is, if indeed the trustees, one of the main jobs is to find fundraising, and find access to money, does that preclude a portion of community members? Are we asking for, inclusive, diverse participation, but when it comes down to it, we only have so many spots, and the main goal is to find money to allow us to get benefits and support out to the community?
So narrow down your question. Is it about if you don't have fundraising, a fundraising background or desire, will we put you on our committee?
Yeah, and not just experience or desire, but access.
And access is interpretable depending on your network. Some people are, and when we onboard volunteers for some of the special events, some groups are very uncomfortable asking their personal network, but will cold call all day long. So I think the conversation we have with them is, we're our fundraisers. So what training can we provide to you in scripts and things like that to help you gain your confidence level? And it's not that it's hard to do, it's just people haven't done it very often. So we'll likely be building some folks' confidence. And in terms of access, you know, we are approaching all this from all sorts of angles. You know, we're looking for people who have can do research and can help us, you know, find things online and maybe fill out online applications for grant funds too. So there's lots of different ways that people can engage with us regardless of what their personal network looks like now. And candidly, it'd be great to help people build a personal network too by introducing them to other segments of the community.
Okay, thank you.
So we are over our time. In respect for everyone's schedules, why don't we move to quick agenda creation for next time. We did not move on this most recent piece though. So do we want to pen this for next time, or do we want to have a quick vote to adopt this as our entry point?
I would ask that we move to adopt it so that we can send it to these interested individuals, and then potentially set up some meetings with them.
That sounded like a motion, didn't it?
I second.
Great. So the motion's been made and seconded to use both the job description and the Q&A that Julie worked with Alex to create to use for those interested in joining the Royal Oak Civic Foundation, with the follow-up that there will be a dialogue with those applicants before adoption. Any clarification on the motion? If not, we'll move forward to a roll call vote. I'll start first with you, Pete.
Yes.
Alex?
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. So we'll move on the agenda to look at our agenda for next time. It's going to be pretty similar, it looks like, actually. So this may take us 30 seconds or less.
Hey, quick question, Julie. The item 16 we had added, Royal Oak Today magazine ad. Is there a motion that is needed, required, or was that an information?
It was just information if you all had priorities that you wanted to make sure go in there. But, you know, I think we have the general gist to fit a half-page ad of what the Civic Foundation is, where we're going, and, you know, what we've just accomplished.
Do we want to join us message in there as well too? Look, you know, seeking community volunteers.
Yep.
All right, let's look at today's agenda and figure out which pieces are going to be repurposed for our next committee meeting. Julie is inviting some folks from Parks and Rec and City Administration to join us. So we should likely make that our first topic to discuss under unfinished business.
How about under topics and presentations? And, well,
yes, what's a discussion? So
yeah. Okay, yeah, sorry. So
yeah.
Unfinished business, right?
Yeah, please, let's leave it at 10, but we'll move it up. It's technically it's part of big picture visioning. So let's move up number 12 and put it in the number 10 spot. And then we should have an update on the fundraiser, so that's fine. That can stay on. Kitch, if we have now in the number 12 spot, we can make that report at that time. Funding process for entities discussion. We're pending that discussion as well. And gift acceptance comes off. Trustee recruiting comes off. And is there any new business that and new business is going to be a presentation that I'll start to design on the first 3 years. Sound good?
Yep. Thank you.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Well, with that said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye by roll call. Alex?
Aye.
Pete?
Aye.
Anyone else in the room? And I'm an aye as well. Thank you all for your time today. Apologies for going over our allotted time.
Oh, no worries. No worries, everybody. Enjoy. It's good to see everybody.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Julie.
Okay.
Thanks,
All
Mark.
right.
Appreciate it.
All
Thank you,
right.
Julie.
Take
Thank you,
care.